Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready for the Wot Supp podcast. With your host, Stu, OG Industry Shannon, and Will warren-davey, new school formulator extraordinaire. We're talking all things supplements with insiders, athletes, experts, and more. So sit back, relax, and prepare to find out what's up.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Wot Supp podcast. This one is back to your original hosts, myself, and of course, Will warren-davey. Good morning, Will.
Morning, Stu. It's been a red hot minute, mate.
It has. Guys, today we haven't got to catch up for a while. It's starting to seem like a bit of deja vu. We almost say this every time we catch up now, and it's been too long, and we're going to do this more regularly. But I think that we're drawing a line in the sand now, and we're gonna catch up a little bit more often than what we have been. Right, Will?
Mate, that's the plan. Admittedly, it's the ongoing plan, but I suppose the good thing with this is being a passion project, not a commercial one, is that we are both, businessmen that have got a lot on, and we do try and fit this around our hectic lives to try and bring out some cool content and give people a bit of an insight to the back end of the industry, maybe things that they might not be aware of yet, things that are coming, trends that might be coming, and just generally what it's like, inside the fitness industry in a given point. But we do have got some exciting episodes, throwing a bit of a throwback style as well, Stu. Hey, you and I, that we're gonna cover some areas that hopefully benefit a lot of you as well, particularly in the supplement industry as well. So it's gonna be good.
Yeah, that's right. So I think the purpose of today is kind of actually a catch up for Will and I. Because we've been so flat out, we haven't really got a chance to check in with each other over the past few months, really. But also, like you said, just a bit of a state of the nation, what's happening in subs, what's going on at the moment, what are the trends we're seeing. It should be a fun episode. So I think, on that note, I'll start, I guess, with you, Will, asking you what's been going on with yourself, with your business, with Primabolics. Give me the rundown. What's been happening the last couple of months since the last time we spoke?
Man, it's been pretty wild. Hey, I've been planning a few product launches, moved warehouses. So that was a disgusting few weeks. We had a place that we signed on before, because obviously Primabolic started out of my bedroom basically, and then went to my garage, then went to it outgrew that, and it's sort of, so our last warehouse was our first one ever. Before that, it was always run out of my house, or my car. So it was always on a much smaller scale. And as I've been blessed for it to grow over the years, I suppose we've needed more and more space, and we went from our first little warehouse before. It was like 100 and something square meter, just a small warehouse, and that was us like going, we're killing it, we're balling. This is we've made it the big time, and I think that was, I suppose, when that lease ran out, we went, look, we've outgrown this, and it got to a point where we were sort of in the middle of this. We had literally just a row of desks in the middle of this warehouse, and we had stock built up around us to the ceiling. And we had this really claustrophobic feeling. You're looking up, and there's like boxes creaking, and like on both sides with the stock everywhere, and people running around trying to pack boxes, and there's just pallets all over the place. And so we well and truly outgrown this space. And so what we did in the first quarter of this year, it was good timing, because we brought on a sales rep, Matt Fawcett. He's come on board for New South Wales, and he's really kicked some goals for us in it. So I think just this expecting to grow, I knew that was my rate limiting factor. Much like you, mate, where you're running a very, very solid website out of, and entire supplement brand out of a brick and mortar store, where most brick and mortar stores struggle to keep stock just for their own store. You've got to run a brand and a store out of a store. So I know you feel the pain on the space front.
Yeah. 100%. And isn't it always the way, though, Will, that when you go to expand and grow, you grab something that you think you'll never, ever outgrow. And it's so funny that you said, that first, whatever it was, 100 square meter warehouse, you're standing in there and you're looking around thinking, I will never need this much space, but I'm better to go big than smaller. And then 12 months later, you're, like you said, you're swimming in stock. Like, for me with GLA, I never really intended it to be a big commercial project any larger than just my store. But once again, when you're passionate about something and when you're putting energy into it, that's really the recipe for growth. And it happens, you know, I'm the same. I've just gotten a bigger space for my online brands, and like both for Universal Supplements and for GLA. And I'm at that stage, I think, where you were at with your first warehouse, where you're looking around going, man, have I gone too big here? You know, but hopefully the story runs a little bit the same, and we get to a point where you know I'm struggling for space in there. So it's exciting times.
It is, man. It's cool, and good on you for that one. We're I hadn't asked details around that off air. We were just sort of we ourselves haven't actually had a chance to catch up properly either, and it's really exciting, man, to see, particularly when if you're a direct to consumer based brand. You know, and for a lot of our young budding entrepreneurs who are listening to this podcast and who like to see the business angle of things, I suppose to grow a website-based business, and I suppose just the scale of stock in that versus a wholesale operation and distribution operation, went to the point where you need a warehouse for a website-based business is a testament to it, because that's a pretty significant scale business then, right? That's huge. Like it takes a lot of, it doesn't take a huge amount of stock comparative to wholesale to get a website cranking, right? Like just tub for tub in terms of, scale. So when you do need a warehouse for a website-based business, it shows you're cranking. That's really cool.
Yeah, well, I think that's really an important point to touch on, is that the business model for a direct-to-consumer is very different to a wholesale style business, in that the turnover is generally lower with direct-to-consumer, but the margin is higher on the stock that you are turning over.
Massively. Yep.
Obviously, this you're dealing with the end point. But yeah, you're totally right, Will. Like, I mean, when I launched GLA website, we were probably getting like real early on launch phase, where the website was built by me on, Shopify or whatever it was. We were probably selling, 7 or 8 items a week on the website. So that's not something you need a warehouse for, right?
Yeah.
7 or 8 items a week you can get away with. But, as things grow and things progress and you learn more about search engine optimization, I've got a company that does all my digital marketing for me now, AdVisible, who has been amazing in helping the brand explode online. You get to a point where you're sending out the kind of stock where you need a lot more space. And that's a really nice thing to happen. But I think the note that I would make is when you're starting an online business, because I think that's the way a lot of young budding entrepreneurs are starting now, right? It's like the internet and the online space is this sort of, it has huge potential, because you don't need to necessarily have the physical shop front. You don't need to have a squeaky clean looking commercial headquarters. You can get it done and make it look professional with an online space. But if you really want to make it boom, you're going to have to put a lot more into it than just setting up the website and sitting back and watching the sales roll in. There's a lot that goes into, like, the content creation, the social media side, the SEO side, the digital marketing side, your Google AdWords. Like, this is stuff that you kind of, I learned as I went along. I'm sure there's somebody who can teach you that stuff, but it's not like everyone thinks, where you set up a website, it goes live, and then it just explodes for you. You got to kind of keep on throwing tinder on the fire the whole bloody time to get it happening. But it gets there.
It does, and there is some self-sustaining momentum. It's quite interesting though. I had a chat about to a good mate of mine recently in business, and I suppose the idea of winning the sale the first time, I suppose, versus how to grow brands and that sort of thing, and I suppose winning a sale versus growing a brand, and selling versus growing the bigger picture of the operation and stuff, and what it comes down to. And I think this is really, when you were touching on there, like I suppose all the different parts of the pie for website, and you've got digital, you've got socials, you've got SEOs, you've got Google. You're all trying to you're trying to make this perfect recipe here to win that first sale, just to get that customer to try your product for the first time. I think it has to come back to that product quality being the bedrock depending on what your type of business is, obviously if it's a service, same sort of application, right? It has to be that your service has to be the bet, it has to be world class for it to build true momentum. I think. I think that the reason that I suppose in your brand we've seen it grow and scale. It's if the base product, once that customer clicks and commits to that product, it has to be what has to be industry leading. It has to be the best in its class. Has to give that an awesome customer experience though, for it to then result in another one, because that's probably the more important analytic, right? Is when you're looking at growth of your business is repeat sales, not just new sales, because anyone can win a sale once, but it's keeping that customer using just your product because they loved the experience so much that they want to find it, they want to get involved in it. They want to say, hey, well, this blew my socks off. Who are these guys? What's this from? Where's it from? What else do they make? But for that to happen, it all comes back to the very beginning, and people who might be listening who are thinking about starting a business, who are just in the early stages, you're in the trenches of just starting out. People don't overlook that I'm a bit old school. Product first. I think.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That Will, there is a real direct comparison to be made there with, like, regardless of what your model is, regardless if it's direct to consumer or wholesale, the same rule applies, and you'll know the same thing with Primabolics, right? It's not that hard to get someone a store to stock your brand, but is your brand then moving, and are people coming back and asking for it again? And someone who has a store and stocks your brand, I think that's one of the things that excites me about brands like yours, like Primabolics. We're in a stage now in the supplement industry where, as a store owner, and store owners or store managers out there will know this, we're being approached every single week with new brands, like literally weekly. We're being approached with new brands, and there's just not this, like, for me personally, my business model doesn't work like that. I don't stock every brand. For me, it's just more inventory I have to hold. So, like, I want to give you an example of what I'm getting at here, Will. For me, in my store, I stock 5 different stimulant-based pre-workouts, and there's a space on my shelves for 1 pump-based pre-workout. Okay, so to me, that's based on the amount of turnover that I do of pre-workouts of different kinds. And if I'm going to bring a new stimulant-based pre-workout into my store, it means I need to remove one of my existing lines. So for your stimulant-based product to come into my store, I have to believe that it's better than something I'm already stocking. There's no reason for me to add, like, let's say, a base order of stock for me to get all the SKUs in all the flavors. That might cost me $3,000. I'm not just going to add an extra $3,000 to my inventory that sits on the shelf. This is now capital that's on my shelf rather than in my bank. So what I need to do is I need to remove $3,000 worth of stock from my lines to put the new one in. And, like, Grind is one that stands out for me, that in my category where I have allowed on my shelves 1 pump-based pre-workout that's non-stim. It's Grind in my store. Now, when I brought Grind in, I dropped Big Noise, and that's that. What I normally will do is I'll give the product a trial run, and we'll see if it's going to move more than the product that came before it. And if the answer is no, then the product doesn't go on my shelf. But I brought Grind in, and we removed Big Noise to bring that in. And then only a few months ago, Bulge was released onto the market, and I gave it a chance. I got some trial tubs in, but in order for Bulge to take Grind's place on my shelf, it would have needed to outsell Grind, and it just didn't do that. So we don't stock Bulge. Even though I stock Faction Labs, I love the brand. I listen a lot to what the sales are telling me. Is the consumer buying this, or is the consumer more interested in this than Grind? So for me, there's not enough sales of non-stim pre-workouts to stock 2 non-stim pre-workouts. It doesn't make sense for my business model. So I have a space for 1. I'm just going to stock what is, for me, the best one. And right now, I believe, and I can honestly say, I think that the best non-stim pre-workout available on the shelves in Australia is Grind. And that's why that is on my shelves. So
thank you. And you pointed out a business lesson there. Actually, that is very interesting. And I think this is where I suppose, particularly those going into brick and mortar or people who are just getting started might be looking for a physical retail space, which is I suppose my bread and butter. That lesson takes a while to learn, right? You know, it takes a long time, because I'm sure in the early days you would have gone like many have, and you would have gone balls to the wall, committed, had every SKU. You probably had 20 pre-workouts in every flavor, every brand, every supplier, and just went crazy. But you I think that ties in beautifully what I was saying before with product first, right? It has to come down to one: will this given space that generate repeat customers? Will these people love this product, love the experience, love the felt effects enough to warrant having it as an ongoing space in the shelf? And if you've got 20 or 30, if you've got a lot of noise in there and not a lot of things that customers are going, wow, let's double down in this space, well, then you've got an issue, right? And I think that's where I suppose I try and work deeper with people on that one, but it takes a long time to learn those lessons. So it's good if we can try and use this platform to save some people some heartache and go, look, maybe if someone's listening and they've got a retail operation, or whether it is website, even like you said, you've still got inventory you have to try and manage. Maybe look more critically at your key lines. Look at what's the purpose of that particular SKU, of that particular brand. What does that do for your customer, for their experience, and is that necessary? Have you got something in that same space that could otherwise help your customer achieve the result? Yes or no, and that can really help you manage cash flow, which I think is that's for me been the biggest learning curve. I think business is an ability to withstand stress and juggle cash. That's the two areas.
Well, I think that second one that you said, managing cash flow, that's the retail killer. And that's why I see the retail stores go out of business. Like, we made that mistake at Aussie Supps, where we had every SKU, every brand, everything that's popular, even if it's got a hint of popularity. If one customer came in and asked for it, we'd stock the whole line, and it's like, it doesn't make sense. So that I don't look at, so I think that people think that variety, or that extreme variety, is more important than it actually is. In fact, you get to a point, there's definitely a balance. You get to a point where too much variety is actually negating some of your sales. So I usually use an analogy that is true for me, where it's like, if I'm going into a service station to buy myself a packet of chippies, right? And I walk in there and there is just too many different flavors to choose from, I all of a sudden get baffled. I've put my fuel in the car, I've walked, I might grab a packet of chippies. Walk in there, look, and there's just, you've got everything. There's 33 different types of chips to choose from. I'm going, oh man, what do I want? I can't decide. What does my stomach want? And I eventually go, you know what, stuff it. I don't even need the chips. I'm just going to grab the fuel. Right. So sometimes thinking for too long can be a sale killer. Whereas if I go in there and there's just salt and vinegar, plain, cheese and onion and chicken, I know I'm grabbing the salt and vinegar and I can grab it and leave, and I've made the sale. So then you get the point where you walk in and there's only plain, and that's not enough variety.
And you've lost the sale. Yeah,
that's right. So you've got to find that balance between enough variety that the customer feels as though there's a selection, but not so much variety that the good stuff is lost in the wall of, random brands and random SKUs. And it's like, how do you sift out the gold from the crap if there's too much there? And I look at stock now as just capital. And I actually look at having more stock. For me personally, it is a negative thing to have more, because it's capital that's locked up that I can't access until it's sold. So I try to have no more in any of my retail stores. I have no more than $50,000 locked up in stock. And that's really important balance. I think that if you don't know what your stock value is and you just keep adding more SKUs, you can blow out to a point where you've got $200,000 worth of capital locked up in stock. But I think I've said this before, even on the show, the way to think about a supplement store is to think about it like a big fruit shop. Okay. The stock is slowly expiring. It doesn't live forever. So you have to realize that you must turn this stock over. There's a day when that stock's value goes from, $50,000 to zero. you can't sell it anymore. You have to throw it out. So it's like turning over fruit. Yeah, it goes bad in a longer period of time, but you still have to look at it like a big fruit shop. It must turn over. So my stock, if there's a SKU that is not turning over in 6 months, it's gone. If it's sitting for 6 months or longer, it is not popular enough. It is not doing what I need it to do. I'm going to remove that SKU. So I like all of my stock to turn over monthly. I like all the stock in my store to be in and out in a month. But if any one SKU goes longer than 6 months, that SKU is not popular enough to be on my lines.
Yeah, it's a good management, I think, that one, because cash flow is really but I think on the cash flow part and having capital tied up in things, one thing that took me a long time to learn was looking at the stock on hand as well as a form of capital, and not just your bank account. There are other forms of capital, right? So when we're looking at, I suppose, as your business is growing and anyone started in those early phases where your business, if you're doing your product or service right, as we said before, it comes back to is the quality there of the product or service. So let's say we've ticked that box and we've gone out, we're having success, we're putting runs on the board, we're growing our business, we're growing. Well, eventually, if you're doing your job right, growth rate can quite easily outstrip your profitability, and you might find that you're actually investing, all of your profit back into building inventory and not taking anything out. And you get to a point where you're looking at again, in this case, maybe you've got a full warehouse of stock, say, but your bank account's empty. Now, don't make the mistake to think the only types of capital are bank accounts, right? If you used to hold 50K of stock and now you hold 200K of stock, your bank account might be empty, but we're winning, right? There's still investments it's just in a different form. But it's really quite good to see someone think critically on their stock management, I think, because there is a lot of, I suppose, sub industry is a really fun one. There's a lot of hype, there's a lot of freshness, there's a lot of change. There's constant change, actually, particularly in recent months. There's been an insane rate of change, in everything, not just the actual supplements themselves, but brands and new releases. And I suppose we started based off the TGA changes, this whole podcast, and that's put pressure and change and reformulations, and so many things have happened, right? And so I think it's super important in that climate of constant change and noise and chatter and just things happening and the industry changing daily, to be really cognizant of the real fundamentals of your business. Where's your capital? How's your cash flow? How's the quality of your product or service? How does that translate to your longevity in your business, right? Your store hasn't been operating for a decade because it's, just by a fluke, right? You've got to be cognizant of the fundamentals, man. But I'll tell you what, though, I think we did, leading to the early questions of what we're both doing as brands, I think that ties in here. I want to segue a little bit into what actually is happening at the moment, because a lot of our listeners are people who are interested in supplements. They're interested in their fitness. They're interested in what's happening in this particular space. So, and I think there's a heap of interesting factors that are influencing this space right now, much like a lot of other sectors, really. But we've got some really interesting things unfolding in manufacturing, in lead times, in freight, in availabilities, in raws, in so many areas. Hey, have you found this in your sort of sector, mate, with GLA? Have you been impacted with any sort of
GLA? Not so much, because we aren't dealing with look, I think probably the biggest thing that I've noticed change since we last spoke anyway, and we should probably talk about this, is the price rises, right?
Yeah.
So there's been a price increase generally across the board in whey protein, in all forms of whey, whether we're talking about whey blends, whether we're talking about WPIs, whatever it may be. So I think that, like, for me, because I don't deal in dairy, that hasn't affected me as much. Definitely lead times, whether we're talking about just manufacturing in general, whether we're talking about plastic bottles, that's been an issue. But I think that something that the consumer will notice most is the steep price increase in both whey and creatine. So that's something we could probably touch on.
Yeah, definitely, mate. And I think the both had an interesting origin, right? And they're both international, which is, I guess, the source of most of this sort of recent issues we've had with price rising and pressure. There has been some internal domestic pressure on things like really inflationary economic policies. We've seen a heap of, I suppose, fiscal support with the whole COVID bubble we had. We also had to try and, with all the businesses being impacted and people being impacted, there was a lot of income support, a lot of money being printed to sort of prop that up. But so domestically there was a lot of inflationary stuff, which in itself will increase prices. But it was quite interesting with the whey. There was around November last year, there was this massive buy up across China and Russia on raw whey as a material, which now makes a lot of sense. Looking retrospectively, so they're buying up large amounts of food product. That's interesting. And then on top of that, we also had a really bad year for dairy product. Dairy numbers were down over in Europe as well. So we had this coincidence of factors where we had huge increase in demand from the two giants, Russia and China, buying up massive amounts of raw material for what was available, and then backed up by lower than typical dairy numbers as well for actual raw material producing whey. So we had this shortage, increased demand and shortage. And we saw that with creatine. It stopped being manufactured as a whole end of last year. And then all of a sudden everyone went nuts for creatine. It became the thing that everyone's getting pushed. We see it online, we see it on TikTok, on Instagram, on all these platforms getting promoted for all its benefits. So it's sort of, we've had a shortage of material at a time when there's been this massive increase in demand for that raw material. And it's unfortunate. Normally you might have decrease of supply with static demand, but we've seen demand increase and supply decrease, and it's created this absurd gap in pricing. Like when you're looking at, Stu, you've mentioned it before, supplements are not a high profit industry. Okay, when you look at apparel, when you look at other areas of manufacturing, plastics and so on, we are not an industry that makes much profit. When you walk into your store and buy a pre-workout for $69.95, it's not like we're making it for $1 a tub. Okay, this is a different animal. This stuff is expensive, and a lot of these things are quite cutting edge. They're amino acids that are very expensive and labor intensive to synthesize, and they're not simple things to put together. So when the margins weren't there anyway. And I suppose then you've also got this increased demand and decrease in supply. There was an inevitable sort of crutch, but there was enough stock in the market to sort of float people for a few months. So we didn't really see that materialize until now, this first quarter of this year, because I think depending on the size of the manufacturers and so on, they held a certain amount of stock on hand. But as they've sort of gone through it, the Aussie market's also boomed. I don't know if you've seen this in your stores, man. Have you had it? This year's been bullshit for subs. Hey, it's been off its head.
Yeah. Well, it has. It's been look better than expected. I'll put it that way. But I think that these price rises are really probably a long time coming. Anyway, regardless of I think that the situation with the whey and with the creatine has been the final hair that broke the camel's back. But I think people really should recognize that there hasn't really been price increases in the supplement industry for more than 10, 15 years.
Oh, it's the most static thing ever, isn't it? It doesn't even make sense for inflation being 2 to 3% a year. I mean, now that's 20, but before, previously, it doesn't even match inflation rates. It's been 69 forever.
Pre-workouts have been $69.95 since I've been in the industry, and I think it's probably the only industry where you're still buying something for the same price now that you were in 2009. But I think what it comes down to is that us as manufacturers, us as retailers, us as people kind of behind the curtains have, I guess, for whatever reason, decided to wear a lot of that impact.
Yeah.
And people have gotten used to the industry just wearing it. And I think that comes down to the fact that that we know that the perception is that it's a high margin industry, and we weren't willing to let those RRPs creep up. But it's insanity. There's no other industry where that would happen. You look at any other manufacturing industry, you look at automotive. If there's something like that goes on, it gets, at some point in the line, it must get passed on to the consumer.
Yeah.
And I think that really we're seeing a build up over, 10 years or more. And then we've got the final hair that breaks the camel's back, where as manufacturers, you guys are just going, look, guys, we can't wear this anymore. We have to pass some of this burden on to you guys, the retailers. And then as the retailers, we're going, well, our business model isn't sustainable if we can't make these margins, which are small as it is. And so that had to be passed on to the consumer in the end. And I think even if you have a retailer out there who you haven't seen an increase in those prices of whey or whatever, at some point in time, you will see it, because I can tell you right now, it's not going to be sustainable. $60 for a tub of whey blend. It just, it can't happen.
It was an interesting space, this, and I think I suppose it trickles down, doesn't it? But you're right. Like we had 3 consecutive 10% price rises on protein, right? So I had a 30% increase on a product that doesn't make 30%. At one stage there, I was literally making negative 4% profit on my hydrolyzed isolate, right? Which is, I wanted, and look, a little bit of this is on me being self-indulgent. I want to have the most premium product. So to me, I have to copy in my business model the idea that I can't always expect the customer to meet in the middle on the fact that if I want the best possible formula and it costs 20 or 30% more than a typical product in this category to make, but I want that to be the best thing in that space that I could offer. And I want to put together the best possible formula possible. I have to accept there's going to be less profit than if I did an average product, and I just have to accept that. So to a certain extent, my business model was geared towards putting out premium formulas, but for a premium profit, like premium price, and therefore my profits were lower anyway. But so I probably felt it a little bit more. But I was like on my hydrolyzed isolate, like ISO ripped. I literally lost like 70 cents a tub selling it. I might as well just give, people ordered a box of protein, I might as well just give them $5 and said it's okay, mate. By the time I freight this stuff, pay my stuff, pick and pack it, pay GST, pay factories, I might as well just give you $5 and say it's all good, mate. Just thanks for coming.
Yeah.
It was. So I guess what that led to was and I passed on 2.5% at the start of the year, but like you said, it makes no sense. No other industry would do that. Like if we have a 30% increase in cost of manufacture and we pass on 2%, like, why, right?
Yeah,
and it's because it's this static and somewhat small industry, the fitness industry, in that people are used to seeing a price that's been there for a decade. But and I suppose everyone got a bit shocked when they saw the big players and the big corporate American brands come in and change pricing overnight 20-30%. But they're just the people who are acting like a corporation would. Corporations don't operate to break even or to lose money. It's only us people who are small, small scale, passionate people who do this because they actually give a shit about that, and are running it like a passion project, not a big corporation that they go, you know what, I'd rather have, the product in the hands of the customers who love the experience and love the formulas and love the product and make nothing on it than to not do it at all. But big corporations don't run like that. So if we were all big corporations in the Aussie supplement industry, then it would be a very different animal. Customers would be paying $100 for a whey blend right now, for a 2-pounder. But we're just lucky that the Aussie sup industry right now is a heap of Aussie legends that are independent brands mostly nowadays. It's pretty much all Aussie real estate, which is great. And we're all doing this because we're passionate, and we're not. Most of them have got the eyes, the bigger picture in mind, where they're going, you know what, I might break even, I might even lose money for the next 6 months, but if I continue to deliver a good quality of product, good quality of service, and the customers are happy, eventually it'll come back in the form of goodwill for the brand anyway, and you worry about it later on. But it's I suppose, bigger picture, like corporations in other industries, like you said, they wouldn't do that. They would just pass it on. Go buggy it.
Something to circle back to though, Will, that you were just mentioning about your brand, which I love, is that you've had the, you've had the confidence to launch a premium brand onto the market in a market where your consumer doesn't realize that there's this chalk and cheese situation going on. I think though that more and more the customer is realizing that there is a huge difference in something like, your Primabolics whey blend, for example, compared to like a gold standard 100% whey. And they are now willing to pay more. And I always make this comparison for the customers. And it's like, you're not going to expect to pay the same for a Lamborghini as you are for a Hyundai. They're both cars, they're both vehicles that you put fuel in and have wheels and engines, but there's a big difference between a Lamborghini and a Hyundai, and you pay for the difference. And that's really the way that I look at these kind of premium products that you're launching is, if I can get the customer to use this, they're going to get the Lamborghini experience. And when you get the Lamborghini experience, you realize it, especially if you've been driving the Hyundai for the last 10 years. But there is no way that you can produce the Lamborghini for the price of the Hyundai. You just can't do it. Like it's that attention to detail. It's that sourcing of the, you've stuck with the Australian grass-fed way when you probably could have gone to Chinese way or, something like that a lot of the brands are using. You've gone and sourced those high quality amino acids that you've added to the protein and those vitamins, minerals, nutrients that other people aren't adding to their protein blend. And it's these little touches where, the end consumer, although yes, you're still buying a tub of protein. Yes, it's still a car with wheels and an engine. At the end of the day, when they use that protein and they see the outcomes from that protein and they taste the flavoring profiles that you have, excruciatingly, slaved over, they'll taste the difference. They'll feel the difference. The consistency is right. And the outcomes are better. And I think that anyone who's used supplements long-term will notice that when they use brands like Primabolics and like the Aussie premium brands that I'm trying to really make the foundational products of my store.
Well, you've got no other. You're all Aussie now, aren't you?
I don't have any US brands left.
Yeah, you've made it as a real standout point, mate. And I think that's the beautiful thing about what your mission statement is there. And I'm seeing that more. One of the only positives come out of the craziness that's been this last few years is probably this big push for supporting the local and supporting the Aussie manufacturing and trying to do things here, and people realizing that relying externally isn't really all that great anymore. There's a lot happening in the world, that we aren't always paying attention to. So it's been a really great thing as well to see. But it is stressful, mate. It has been hard because the customer has an expectation, right? They're used to paying Hyundai prices. So it's super scary to put out, a product that is at Lambo prices in an industry that's not used to it, because they're used to big brands with big marketing budgets putting out stuff. Like traditionally, it was very much a US dominated space, right? And by the time they manufactured in the States, air freighted or sea freighted, got it here, we pay GST on it, then it goes to a distributor who then has to sell it to a store, who then has to sell it to a customer. There's so many points in the chain where people have to try and make profit for their business to operate. By the time it got here, you couldn't make a product that was premium because the raw material cost had to be so low to do all those different points along the way. So the products that hit our shores had to be rubbish. It's like Australian wine. When we export our wine, they don't get the premium stuff overseas because the costings aren't there, right? We're not pumping Grange out to China, are we? We're not doing Edelston Hills, or we're not doing like Henschke stuff. Like this is it. So what we were getting for so long was the Hyundai range, and it's a tricky space to try and walk into that space then, especially as a newer brand, or if a customer hasn't heard of you before, and say here's this, just take my word for it. It's $20 more, but just it's hard, and it's stressful too, because I suppose in a space where there has been increased cost of living pressures and stores are feeling that too. There's the margin questions and that sort of stuff, and you go, look, you get good shit ain't cheap, and cheap shit ain't good, and you can't trump that at the end of the day. If you want to put out something worth building a mission around and worth building a brand around, you've got to. But I think it gets overlooked with people get almost more concerned about the idea of being a successful entrepreneur and about starting a business. They get caught in the romance of it, and they sort of skip that initial step. What are you going to bring to the world? What are you going to show up as that's worthy of continuity? It's worthy of longevity. What are you going to offer the marketplace that isn't there now? Or if it is there now, how are you going to do it better? How are you going to do it uniquely? Is it like, think of that first, then work backwards? That's what I always did. Think of the best possible product that I could make, and then find a way to build a brand around that, and then find a way to market that brand, and it all starts there. You go back out. To me,
it's like, I think that's a really beautiful point, Will, because the young entrepreneur that I'm seeing now, like I was speaking to a buddy of mine the other day, and he's like 23, 24, full of excitement and full of beans. And he's got this idea to do this business, but it's all based around drop shipping. And to me, I know that there's money to be made in drop shipping, but to me, what he's doing is he's trying to look for the very, very cheapest way he can get his item, the absolute cheapest, get his brand stuck on it, and have it sent from some factory in China direct to the consumer. He's never seen the product, he's never had anything to do with it. He's not put his personal touch on it. He's not improved on it. He's found a manufacturer in China who makes his particular product. I won't mention what the product is because I know he'll he'll be embarrassed to know that I'm talking about him. But he's never seen or felt his own product. He's, seen a photo sent to him from, David in China, who is then sending it out to the consumer. And, to me, I think that model, I think it's been done very well by some companies, but I think it's the big giants who are going to do that well now. I think that really having that personal touch on it and really putting yourself into whatever the product is the way to go. You look at Primabolics and it screams Will. It's like, I know how you formulate. I know how you like to do it. So when I see a new product come out and I have a look at it, I go, yeah, that's a Will product. I can see that Will formulated it. And
my accountant can too, and she hates me.
It's like your signature. It's almost like your signature is in the blend. I can see it with, like, if you show me just on paper 4 different people's formulations, I've gotten to a point now where I can probably almost tell you whose formulations they are based on the blends. Like yours is going to be like about this long, someone else's mine's going to be about this long.
Yeah, you got your 5 ingredient rule.
Yeah. And it's just, I like that, I like it that it's got your signature on it. It's got your, it's got your character in the product, even like in the labeling and all that. It's, that's why I think that you've been successful, is because you've put your energy into it. You haven't gone to a contract manufacturer in the States and said, give me a house blend way and put the word Primabolics on it. And we've all done that. We've all tried that way of doing things.
Yeah, of course.
I know when I was first trying to launch brands and stuff like that, I did that. I was like, yep, we'll do your house pre-workout, because this was a way to launch a brand in 2014, 2015 was, you go to a US contract manufacturer and they have a house blend pre-workout, they have a house blend whey, they have a house blend amino, and you just put your branding on it and you hit the market with it. But it doesn't stand out. There's nothing unique about it, and there's 4 other brands that have the same blend.
That's what I get. That's what I think the industry's sorely lacking, right? I keep putting out things that, like you said, they are unique, they're a bit different. But it's only because I'm looking at the current space, and look, I don't try and walk into a space and make a product in that category if I think it's done well. So that's the preface. Do I go, can I do it better? It comes like that initial sort of market analysis. What's current in the market? What are customers' experience with that product? How are people liking that? How are they enjoying it? The flavors, the taste, the felt effects, great. If they are, cool. If the formula's great, awesome. No worries. Let's leave that space alone. Nootropics, right? Like I really like full like I'm bipartisan on this one. I was gonna, nootropics before were very much underutilized as a category. I was super interested in them as well, and I love neuroscience, so I was really interested in them. And I started putting pen to paper and started making some interesting sort of formulations and so on. And then I suppose like Faction, right? They put out Attention, and that was a really, really complete product. And I went, you know what? This is a great product, great flavors, mixes well, tastes great, phenomenal blend, well dosed, good active ingredients. I went, cool. You've done that category well. Hats off to you. That's fine.
That's the same reason I haven't done a pre-workout at all.
Yeah, same. 100%, same. There's no need, is there? There's no need. It's been done. It's been done to death. Although pre-workouts, I will argue, are all the fucking same at the moment. The industry is so non-innovative, which is a real, at the moment anyway, it seems. There's a lot of handcuffs on us though with the TGA changes. So I understand that people are working within the confines they have with pre-workouts right now. But you read them and it's the same. It's 6 grams, 3.2, 2.5. I don't even have to read the ingredient anymore. I look at the dosages and I already know exactly and everything's the same. And
I think that one of the reasons that's happening, Will, is so like a big brand, for example, like Faction Labs will do all of the they'll do all of the groundwork whereby they'll get a TGA consultant to make sure that this blend is legal and that we can have these dosages and that we can make these claims and all that. And then you get a bunch of these little guys who don't necessarily have the funds to do that with their product. And they go, well, we know that if we just copy exactly what they've done,
It's compliant.
then it's legal and we can put it out. And I think that's happening a lot. I think that you have a lot of brands scared to try anything because they don't want to go through the process of having their product pulled. And you know, I worry about that, Will. I hope that we get to a point where there is a little bit more
creativity,
creativity coming back into things, because I don't want to see the same product repeated. Because
I never had an intention to do a pre-workout. Like, as a brand, I'm really big on pushing. Like last, I did another seminar on the adrenal space and hormonal balance, and I'm trying to look more holistic, especially as I'm getting older. Instead of when I started the brand as a hardcore 21-year-old bodybuilder who was really, you know, like everything was just stims and growing mass, right? That was all I cared about, was muscle mass and stims. And now, as I've gotten older, I'm more interested now in longevity, holistic, like the hormonal handbrakes and what, you know, I suppose how to manage stresses and optimize your biology, really. And so that the products have followed me down that rabbit hole more so than where it used to be. So pre-workouts really weren't. I'm not a big high stim person. As you'll see in all my products, my only pre-workout in the market's caffeine free. So I'm not a big stim person, but I'm looking at the pre-workout market going, there's so many gaps here. There's so many things that people aren't thinking about with how the body actually works, and how energy production works, the electron transport chain works, the Krebs cycle works, what energy systems you utilize when you actually exercise, and like there's just, I could really, really put something out in that space. It'd be fun, but it's not necessarily my, I suppose, where I'm normally going. But when I do see a gap in there and I go, you know, there's another way to look at this picture that no one's looking at it from, I sort of go, you know, and so I suppose innovation can be from an interesting place. But I do think we have had an interesting time here, and we've had all these rapid changes. But the thing I do love about the industry, because to go to a positive, is that we adapt super fast. We are overnight change, and we have no issues. Like look at when we started this podcast, it was pretty much me, you, and Matt Highgate sitting there and going, well, we're all fucked, guys. Nice knowing you. I'm gonna go work in real estate. So it was a real bleak time, right? And within months, everyone was like, all right, flip the script, reformulate, repackage, put products out, boom, let's go. Here's our new goalpost, run at them. You know, the industry is so good at changing fast. I do love that about it. You know, very, very.
And we're even getting to a point now, Will, where a lot of these products that have launched that were, I guess, an adaptation or a response to those changes, now are being exported around the world, and other countries are loving these new kind of innovative blends and formulas that we're coming up with here, which we're actually just, you know, in response to the fact that we can't do it the way that, you know, we were doing it before. And people are loving these products. And we've got this export market now where, you know, the US, New Zealand, like New Zealand's a big one where a lot of Australian products are going to NZ, even, you know, India, Thailand. A lot of these Australian brands are being picked up because no one's ever seen any formulations like this before.
No, because we're very lucky here. We have the Lambo market, really, compared to everyone else right here in Australia, don't we? We're so blessed here that our recommended retail price is much higher than the US for a given product. Like even when you convert it, let's say a lot of pre's on the American shelves are 39 or 49 US, right? So 44 to 59 Australian. So they, just by virtue of economics, they can't match our formulas because they don't have that same recommended retail price as the ceiling. And anyone starting businesses, when I guess this is I've been doing a little bit of business mentoring with some friends recently, and I think what's been really interesting is watching it from the ground up again and going back, you know, a decade sort of thing, looking at the grassroots of it. And where you see that is, I suppose, looking at just the what's the end prize and reverse engineering it to figure out what your constraints are is a big part of the business model. Whether it's your product or service, whatever it is, you have to know what your customer is willing to pay for it, what the middleman, if there is one, is willing to pay, and then what therefore you can, you know, what you need to make to run your business and work backwards from there. But overseas they don't have that big ceiling we do. They're down here, we're up here, so we can formulate all this space, all this real estate. They can only formulate this. So you're right. Like countries like the US love our products because they're so premium. Like their formulas are just nuke everything over there. Like this, so we're really fortunate in Australia to have such, like, things are being released now, and it's exciting, man. Like Faction could have put out Bulge and just done, you know, a small amount of glycerol, small amount of citrulline, and just called it a day. But they didn't. They went deep on it. Like hats off to them. Like they didn't. That was one of the few things that was, I was going, wow, this is actually getting up there with grinding. I'm excited. The market's leveled up a lot. Like the big noises of the world and stuff, and other products in the pump category prior to this were nowhere near this sort of category now. Everything's up its game. So we're in an exciting time. Lots of innovation, formulas that are coming out are getting better and better every month. People are putting bigger dosages. It's cool.
Yep. I know something that I want to ask you, Will, like while we've got just a couple of minutes left, is I want to know what's coming. What's coming for Primabolics? What's coming for the market? Give us a look into the crystal ball.
I've got something that's going to change things, man.
Are you going to give us any hints, or are you going to keep it close to your chest for now?
No, I'm going to give a bit of an idea on it, right? So I looked at I did the same thing I was talking with Prees. I looked at a particular space. I looked at customers more, and I went holistically. What do we have in the market that can give them a foundational health? What are people's issues? And like I suppose a lot of people are stressed. They're very stressed, inflamed. We've got poor gut health. We've got nutrient deficiencies are huge. Like 70% of people are magnesium deficient, zinc deficiencies everywhere, vitamin D deficiencies everywhere. So I went through and went, okay, what would benefit the average person to make their biology basically bulletproofed? What would help with energy production because everyone's tired and stressed and sleeping shitty? What would help with inflammation? What would help with, and basically I reverse engineered it. So it's going to be a new category. It's actually not going to be.
I like this. I like when people do new categories. Greg Haglund was famous for it a few years ago, but now the categories that he created basically are the categories that we now operate in. So that's exciting. It's a bold territory to go out and do a new category. Especially when people say, "What is it?"
Mate, and is that initial lag?
Is it a greens product? Is it a pre-workout? Is it a fat? But you've done this before a little bit, right? You were kind of the first to sort of do I think really no one's done it. And I don't even know what you'd call the category that metabolizes in.
Yeah, that was unique.
But that's kind of its own product, right? It's not a thermogenic.
No.
Like solely anyway.
No,
like it is thermogenic, but it's not solely a thermogenic. It's not a pre-workout, but it can be used as one. It's not a thyroid hormone product, but it has those benefits. And it's kind of in its own little space. It's like an everyday health product. That's right. But it's like you can't just call it a health. What category is this? Health.
Well, mate, that was a stressful thing with this. I was trying to put on the labeling. I'm putting the finishing touches on the labels, and I've gotten product samples and that sort of thing put together and everything. I was just about to put down, and I've got a little tagline on each of my labels telling the customer what it is, right? And it's usually straightforward. Lean whey protein blend or what, non-stimulant pre-workout. Right? It's very straightforward. This thing, I was like, I don't even know what to call this. And I was going, well, is it this? Is it that? And we go, well, no, it's not. And it sort of cheapens it to call it that. And it doesn't really fit the mold of that. I went, well, fuck, I can't put it anywhere. And so it's sort of, and I'm going to coin that category. It's going to be a wellness formula is what I'm going to call it. It's going to be basically it's going to be an all-encompassing sort of,
all-encompassing wellness formula.
Pretty much. It's what it's literally going to be on the packaging. It will literally say wellness formula. It's going to be something to basically take someone's biology and make it bulletproof. Look at energy production, immune function, look at gut, look at inflammation, look at nutrient deficiencies, look at everything, and try and have one thing that if anyone could sort of bulletproof them from the current insane society that we're in. And with it's huge.
You take one scoop of this stuff, and then all of a sudden your eyes are open to the big. The grand scheme and what the man's trying to do to us and the elites and
man, this shit is fun to make. Hey,
all-seeing eye. That's what you should call the product, the all-seeing eye.
It's fun to put out something new, hey, and put out because I was looking at it and I'm going, this is something that I want everyone to, because I want, and from a retail space and just in general on the fitness industry, people are burning the candles at both ends now. The cost of living is high. People have got a lot on their plate. There's a lot of stimulus. There's a lot of noise, right? There was a study done now that it was done in 2019 versus, and they've done the same. They say that the amount of information we receive in a given day, and that's in all forms of stimulus, is 3 times that of what it was in the 60s. So we're having 300% more and information, text, messages, calls, emails, conversations, like the amount, and we're not switching off either, and just the amount of things just bombarding us in our environment without the actual environmental parts like BPAs, plastic, soy, poor food quality, poor soil, like nutrient availability, all these sort of massive fucking cloud around us. And we've got, and I think trying to make people health products that can actually help them combat that, what we operate within now, our physiology wasn't designed for what we live in now, is going to be an exploding category, I think, in SUP. So that's what we've almost feel as a moral obligation, to give people the access to things that can help them sort of combat that. Can go, here's what everyone's up against in modern society. If you want to live, if you want a ticket at this table, you've got to be able to deal with immense stress. You've got to be able to deal with a huge amount of changing environments and lots of environmental burdens and heaps going on. And I think that area of health and wellness and how to give people something to help them shield themselves from that will be a big thing in the future. I don't know if it's going to be in our space in sports and stuff, but it's definitely going to be in general. I'm seeing that trending hard with a lot of the.
Well, I think isn't it like, really, aren't humans these mammals that are evolved to be these nomadic kind of hunter-gatherer creatures? That's what we're evolved for. We created an absurd environment for ourselves, and we expect to operate at some level of comfort in these absurd environments. And it's like as strange as just like, taking a dog and asking it to live on the moon. It's like, it's not really what we're supposed to be doing.
No,
right? All this stuff is not how we're supposed to be.
That's what that's what these seminars. That's what I'm trying to do. These seminars more, man. I know it's old school doing it in person, and it's like I could do a much bigger reach doing it online and so on. But I just trying to give people access to information. Going, your biology, how you evolved, is so at odds with where you are now. Like you said, hunter gatherers. We're animals at the end of the day, and we evolved, and our biology evolved with how everything functions for that environment, and we are so different. We're so detached from that, and we're so it's such a so we're to function now. We almost, I suppose, is the question where customers always say, do you need supplements and so on? it's like, well, when your body is functions, is built for an environment that hasn't been around for centuries now, how are we meant to function without help?
Well, it's almost like, well, so to answer the question, do you need supplements? You could almost sit there and just strip the customer down to a loincloth, give them a spear, and say, well, now you don't. Now, on your way, you don't now. But if you want to keep living the way you are, then there's definitely some improvements we could make with these things, unless you want to go hunt and gather, and live in a little tent or something. You probably could be benefiting from some of this stuff.
Oh man, even look at your lifestyle in the last little bit. Like you were just down in Adelaide with our good friend Joe Mansell doing podcasts down there. So you're down, flying, traveling interstate, other stores, long days, not much sleep, go. You got a family at home. You got to try and also, upkeep, and it's fucking hard, man. There's a lot of pressure on people, and our situations aren't even that unique. People are having to work longer hours, put more responsibilities on, trying to level up. Almost by necessity now, the cost of living is quite high. And so I think these aren't unique situations. People are busy, they're overworked, they're overstressed, there's no catcher's mitt for that level of burden on them. There's no yin to their yang, it's just all just bury you under huge amounts of work and responsibility. And so what I'm trying to do, I'm looking at stuff now going, okay, what's coming for people? What's going to be valued, and how do we keep health in someone in this environment, and so hopefully it's something that's well received, but it's something, it might be a little bit ahead of its pace, but it should be hopefully something fun to see in the next month or so.
It's a bit of a watch this space.
That's the plan, mate.
Keep a close eye on Primabolics, because something is coming, and we're all excited to see what it is. I think that's actually probably capped off quite a nice little episode here.
100%.
So we might leave it at that point. I think what I'd like to do in the next sort of couple of weeks is really delve into some of these avenues a little bit deeper that you're touching on, but I think it's probably something we need to really compartmentalize and touch on one area at a time. I think if we did a little bit of a podcast series on, for example, some of those individual hormones that we're, I guess, we've thrown the balance out of with this lifestyle and things like that would be a really interesting series for us to do. So
yeah, definitely, mate.
If
definitely.
you're happy to, we might head in that direction for the next few episodes.
Always happy to talk bio, mate. Always happy to talk bio. It'd be wicked to get. I think particularly we could do like a mini series on it. Look at it over the next few weeks, delving into these areas of testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, stress, and how the body actually functions, and hopefully give our listeners a bit of an insight into, well, this is how it's meant to work in a perfect world. This is how currently we see it working quite often. How can we get back to how it should be, and look at what the supplement world can offer, and how they work, and that'd be really cool, man. Let's plug in some deep dives. Let's make these an ongoing sort of regular little series we put together in the next few weeks.
Yep, let's do it. Well, thanks so much for having a chat with me this morning. Thanks for updating us on the industry, on the trends. It's been a lot of fun, and I will see you next week, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a rating, whatever platform you're listening on. Hit like, follow us on socials. We always love that sort of exposure, and it really helps grow our podcast. Thanks for listening, guys.
Cheers. Till next time, mate.